you're very much focused on being of service to people, which is why I especially wanted to talk to you to celebrate July Disability Pride Month, because you are an entrepreneur who has devoted your life to be able to be a social impact business in this community. Can you talk more about why you're so passionate about serving this community and why you've devoted your life to this?
Yeah, absolutely. So, just to give a little bit of background, how I went from an occupational therapist to what I do. Essentially, in occupational therapy school back in 2016, I had a class project. And during that class project, a classmate and I were inspired to help adaptive surfers here in Southern California be able to cross the sand in their wheelchairs with more dignity and respect than the other solutions that were out there. So for that class project, we created a portable access mat prototype, not what it looks like today, but a handmade prototype. And we volunteered at an adaptive surf competition and essentially realized that, wow, this really impacts people's lives. It made them feel more independent, happier. They were able to cross the sand without being carried. And it was just a really magical moment of, okay, I guess I'm going to be an occupational therapist, but also an entrepreneur. So after graduating OT school, within 6 months, I started the company Access Trax, and for a few years worked as a clinician as well as starting the company. So it took me about 3 years to go full time with Access Trax, and I really, really enjoy it because for me as a clinician, as an occupational therapy clinician, I could help maybe 10 patients or clients in a day, right? But as an occupational therapy entrepreneur, I can actually help up to millions of people across different countries and maybe people who don't even speak my same language, right? But we can all speak the same language of I enjoy the outdoors, I enjoy Mother Nature, I enjoy sports and recreation. And that's that common thread that I feel so connected to, is making sure that there's better equity out there for access. And so that's how I'm able to practice OT, is just in a different way, right? Just being able to work with assistive technology and serving the community.
Thank you so much for sharing that. That actually brings me to another question that, you mentioned adaptive sports and recreation. You mentioned assistive technology. Can you talk a little bit more about that for people who may not be familiar with those terms?
Yeah. So assistive technology really is just the term for any device or even software that helps a person be more independent or successful in accomplishing a task. So that could be, on your cell phone, an app that makes the print larger, right? It could be speech to text is actually an assistive technology. It helps somebody say something and then it types it out for them. You also have things like wheelchairs and prosthetics and hearing aids. Those are all examples of assistive technology. And then regarding adaptive sports, so this is where I really light up, because adaptive sports is really just any sport or activity that a person can participate in just maybe a non-traditional or non-mainstream way, and yet it's still that same sport, right? Like it's still the heart of the activity and allowing a person to participate. There can be an adaptation so small that you might not even notice, or it's an adaptation that's like a little bit more visually obvious, but regardless, they're still able to have fun or even compete. Maybe it's a competitive adaptive sport, and it really just enables everybody to have a fair level playing field.
Thank you for sharing that. Now, one of the things that's really special about Access Tract is the impact you've already made. So you started the business in 2018, I believe that's when it
Mm-hmm.
was established. And recently USD did a social impact report. And I think they were able to calculate that you've worked with over 50 nonprofits and that you have donated through donations or through sponsorships over $50,000. And that's a lot for a startup in its first 5 years of business.
Yeah.
So, can you talk about why it's been so important to you to be so generous from the beginning and how that's impacted your business?
Yeah. Yeah. When that number came out, I was myself shocked. I'm so busy in the day to day that I didn't really have the time and energy to sit down and do that. So I was really grateful to work with students at USD. And for those listening, if anybody, out there has a business, I would highly recommend working with a local university for student internships and projects because it's amazing the things that they can help you with when you don't have the time as the business owner, maybe. But aside from that, so yeah, I think at the very surface level, when you are doing sponsorships or donations, volunteerism in general, it's not just the nice thing to do, it's a business decision, it's a marketing decision. So when I first was getting ready to launch the company, we have a prototype of a physical product, and you have to get the input from the people who you are designing for. You have to design with them and not just for them. It's all about including in every point of your business, every stage, how can you work with those you're trying to serve. And that's not just people with disabilities, right? It's any business. That's like the main thing is you want to make sure that you have product market fit. And if you're not including the market or your customers in that decision-making process, you may miss the mark. So from the beginning, I always volunteered and sponsored at especially adaptive surfing in that community because that was the initial inspiration for the product. And those were definitely the early adopters. But then even beyond that, I've stayed involved, especially in San Diego, with a lot of organizations and nonprofits that serve just adaptive sports in general. And one of those, for example, is the Challenge Athletes Foundation. So we do in-kind sponsorship of a lot of their events throughout the year. And they serve a wide variety of people, and a lot of people and their families and businesses come to their events. And so it is also a marketing decision. So don't be afraid to be generous with your time as long as you understand that there will be ROI from that. And it has to make sense for your particular business or your personal passion, right? That's a big key thing too, is making sure that what you're doing and donating your time and energy to is something that you really feel passionate about.
Yeah. And I know in talking with you, it really made an impact on me when I was making a decision to get involved with adaptive sports and being really willing to put myself out there and to donate my time, because we can donate our money, we can donate our time or
Mm-hmm.
talents, to really be generous in volunteering because of the relationships you make with people as well, which
Right.
is really great. And people see you're doing it from the right place with a good heart. Um, so, another thing I wanted to ask you about is that you mentioned about the adaptive surfing. We talked about sports, but what's something really cool is that this product is actually something that is gone beyond that. Like people can use this for a variety of uses. Can you talk about some of the different ways that you found that people have used Access Trax mat that maybe have surprised you, or just the wide range that this mat can be used for?
Sure. So initially, of course, as I mentioned, it was the beach and adaptive surfing. And then from there, it was, well, what about using it on really thick grass or using it on mulch that you might find at a community garden or a playground or gravel at a campground. So then from there, it started to grow concept wise. And then also different industries started to get involved. So while my primary focus is always and will always be serving people with disabilities, the cool thing is that when other industries start to use your product, that makes your revenue go up and you're more diversified, and then you're able to spend more money and time giving back to your core values. So for me, the first one that happened was in 2021, a year that was really tough on a lot of businesses and even the year prior. But in 2021, I got contacted by the film industry because they wanted to use my mats to move their heavy equipment and their cameras on uneven terrain like sand at the beach. So that has opened up a lot of possibilities because the film industry, wow, those people are they're very handy. They know how to use different things in different ways and they're very creative. And so they've kind of just gotten used to using things that have been used for many, many years in the same way. Whereas I'm coming in with a product that could be potentially, well, actually is a lot more efficient and lightweight and portable than the things that they're currently using. Nobody's just thought to innovate in that space. And so I'm able to come in and really help a lot of people make their job easier. And then another way that was really funny, I got contacted by I guess like a theme park slash museum type place in New Jersey, and they wanted to ask me if they could use my mats over grass, which is a yes, with a wheeled object, yes, and they're for giant dinosaurs. So it's a place called Field Station Dinosaurs, and they create this awesome interactive experience where they have these giant dinosaurs, and they move them around to create exhibits and activities. So they had a hard time moving them on grass, and so they bought some of my mats. That was a really funny one. But yeah, I have people using them for all sorts of things. It's really interesting.
Yeah, and I remember you also told me about people who've used them for weddings and how it's helped people who have
Yes.
mobility issues be able to allow people to be at outdoor weddings and graduation ceremonies. And
Yep.
we were recently at the Warrior Games, and you were able to use that for one of theirs. So there's so many uses for it. And I think what you spoke to, which is really important, I think, for people to know, is also that when you design and you invent for the community of people with disabilities, it's also a very universal and innovative product that can be for more than just that particular market.
Right.
And so, yeah, I think, and maybe you can correct me, like there's 61 million people that in the, US that have disabilities. Would I be saying that number correctly?
That sounds about right. Yeah.
So there's a lot of people out there, but when you're designing or you feel inspired to work as an entrepreneur in that field, it doesn't mean that you're limiting yourself to only being able to help those people. Um,
Right.
and you also had some really exciting things happen recently. You have been awarded the Metro Connect grant and also are being featured as one of the businesses in the JP Morgan Chase campaign. You were recently in that ad that was during the NBA Finals. So what are some of like your, with all these new exciting things happen, like what are some of your big visions for how you see Access Track growing?
Yeah, thank you. I know those were a lot of really exciting things happening in a short amount of time. I think
Mhm.
at one point it was a bunch of things, even in a 1 week span. So that was totally awesome. But yeah, I think my large vision for Access Tracks, our North Star goal, is to partner with the Paralympics in 2028. Because if you may not know, I know you know, but some people listening may not know that
Yeah.
the Olympics and Paralympics will be in Los Angeles in 2028. So some other interesting facts about that one is that surfing got added to the Olympics in 2020. And often, when something like that happens, when a new sport is added to the Olympics, usually it takes a couple of cycles for it to potentially get added to the Paralympics. And it's this whole political process where you have the IPC, the International Paralympic Committee. They have to review things. You have to have a certain minimum number of classified, like officially classified athletes in that sport from a minimum number of countries. You have to have developed the sport with official championships. So it's a pretty complicated process. It's not as easy as I really want to add this sport because it would be exciting. So the community is working and has been working for many years on trying to get surfing added to the Paralympics. And there is a chance that surfing will be added to the Paralympics for LA 28. Essentially, the LA 28 committee has by the end of the year to decide if they would like to or not. And every winter we host, not we, but the US hosts the World Para Surfing Championships. And so we're really hoping to maybe have that announcement either right before or during that event, because how incredible with all of the surfers there. And this is in November this year in Huntington Beach. So just some exciting things developing for the Paralympics. And that's just a big goal of mine, is to be involved here in Los Angeles in Southern California, to make a mark and not only just be there just to be there, right? But it's about providing the athletes the access that they need and deserve for the beach activities. So even if there isn't surfing, there's the triathlon and para triathlon. So swim is a portion of the para triathlon, as you may know, and we need to make sure that those athletes have access to the swim entrance and exit portion. So we are excited to be contracted with USA Triathlon to provide that service, and we have for their national championships for a few years in a row now. We're actually gearing up to do that next week in mid-July in Long Beach. So that's kind of how we're hoping to be involved, is through USA Triathlon, through the hopefully para surfing, but really just helping make Los Angeles and that greater community more accessible in general.
Yeah. I was going to say, with LA being the site for the next Paralympics, it's just an incredible opportunity for Access Trax. And I hope that everybody will get a chance to go out and witness and experience these incredible athletes. And, since I've gotten a chance to know you, every time I talk to you, you're doing so many things. You're at so many events. You're not just at events for Access Trax, you're a big part of the community that is serving. You're a part of MCAP, you're a part of things that put on events for the community to bring together. I was just at the recent San Diego Adaptive Sports, Recreation, and Resource Fair that you helped organize, and it brought together 20 plus nonprofits and businesses specifically just to help people who have mobility issues, and to teach them different sports they could be a part of, or just different resources. So what I've noticed about you is that you're always on the go. Like, where do you get your energy, your drive to do all that you do? And when times get tough, as they do sometimes, what keeps you going? Like, what do you say to yourself? What's your motto that keeps you going?
Yeah, so this is a special one. So I only probably in the past year and a half started talking more about this openly, but my mom had a disability. So when I was 12 years old, she had a massive stroke and became disabled. And she's the inspiration for why I wanted to become an occupational therapist in the first place, is I wanted to help others like those who had helped my mom. And I really I don't know if it was just me just being so much on the go and not sitting down and really thinking about that as much as part of my story is the reason of why am I so passionate? Because not a lot of people ask me that question, it's just kind of, they see what I'm doing. They're like, all right, you're inspirational or whatever. And I just keep going. But to have that internal passion and drive is so important when you are an entrepreneur in general, because there are so many ups and downs and you're busy running this way and that, and there are a lot of things that happen. And I think that's a big part of what keeps me going is my mom and honoring her memory, because she is no longer with us. She passed away recently, but I just feel so connected to her still. And I feel like she's still proud of me. And that definitely keeps me going when it's hard, is thinking about all of that. And also for sure, a big piece of it is knowing that, okay, as an OT, I can help 10 people a day, but as doing what I'm doing with Access Trax, I can make such a bigger impact in the world. And that's honestly super exciting to me, really motivating. I like a challenge, and I see it as an important challenge of me trying to leave the world better than where I found it, So yeah, I would say for sure inspiration comes from my mom. It comes from my past, current, and future customers who need me to be able to keep this thing going so that someday they can find my business. And hopefully inspiring others to also want to serve the disability community. There's so much room for innovation in this space. It's unreal, between business services and products, assistive technology, different prosthetics for regular everyday use, but also for sports and recreation and competitive sports, for how people can utilize either public transportation or their own personal transportation. There's just so much room. So I invite everyone to come think about how we can serve people with disabilities, whether it's a totally new invention or something that you make better or make more universally designed. So, for example, you may or may not have seen recently that L'Oreal, the makeup company, tried to come out with, oh, we're designing these makeup applicators that help people who have tremors. So it's an applicator that I want to say it's electronic, and it has like a gyrometer, so it knows when it's being moved and potentially a not smooth rotation, and it can counteract the tremors. And so you have a smooth way of applicating eyeliner or lipstick, right? Unfortunately, I have not seen that these things have come to fruition and are not available for people to buy, but I would challenge more and more companies to start thinking about, okay, this is what I do really well, is I'm in the makeup space, or I'm in the cooking utensil space, whatever it may be, right? Start thinking about, ooh, how can I adapt what I already do well to serve more people? Because at the end of the day, it's a business decision. You make more money if you serve more people.
That was great. I appreciate you sharing all of that, because that was going to be my question, was like, if an entrepreneur is like, I want to help more people, I want to serve the, disability community, like, what advice you would give them to get started? And maybe you can answer that question just sort of if looking back, if you could kind of go back in time and go back to, Kelly years ago, like, what advice would you have given yourself? If there's been some big lesson that you've learned that you could kind of get in a time machine and go back and be like, whisper that in your ear.
Yeah, so there's definitely two parts to that. So I think the first part is, what advice would I give businesses who are trying to get more involved in the disability community? And I think from there, one, you want to make sure it's authentic. So start from a connection you may already have. Maybe somebody has a disability. Maybe you know somebody who has also worked with a disability focused consulting company, because there are companies out there where people with disabilities serve as consultants to help you. Because I guess one of the things I wanted to share is make sure that if you are wanting to serve people with disabilities, that you include them at not just the testing phase of the product, but the design phase of the product. Because it's a shame when you go all the way to you've got the prototype and you go to test it with them and you're like, yeah, I think it's going to work great. And then all of a sudden they're telling you all these things that may not have been designed as appropriately as they could have if you would have included them from the start. And I'm not saying it's easy, right? Because people with disabilities, there's all types of disabilities, just like there's all shapes and sizes and varieties of people, right? Like everybody has a different background, a different, different abilities, different preferences. And so it's good to include not just one person, but a variety of people, get their input. And maybe you start small and you design one modification, but then from there you continue to grow and learn, and maybe you design a couple of others. So basically just encouraging people to seek feedback from the people who you are trying to serve at all stages of the development. And then just trying to be authentic with it. Ask questions. Don't assume anything. Really just being curious and being open-minded as much as possible. And then when it comes to, what advice I would have given myself from 2015, 2016, there's a couple of things, and I'll start with a couple of the generic any business advice. And the first one is borrow money before you need it, because when you need it, they won't give it to you. That's one that's a really hard lesson to learn, because a lot of people think like, well, I don't want to get into a loan or a business loan if I don't absolutely need the money yet? What, I don't want to be accruing interest and all this other stuff. But the thing is that if you are still working full time at your quote unquote day job before you make the leap to start your own business, you have established hopefully good credit, and you've established that you have a stable income. That is when you want to start borrowing the money, because when you have quit your day job and you have very little income, and maybe you don't have all your assets anymore, like your vehicle, because you sold it to help pay for the business, they're like, well, I have no collateral from you. I don't know if you're going to have the capacity to pay this back. And so therefore, I'm sorry, we want to help you, but we can't. And that's a big reason why. So I bootstrapped my business, and I've had to go through a lot of applying for small business grants. And I've been lucky and worked hard and earned them, but free money is the best money, grants. But that doesn't come around very often, and it's hard to win those. So thinking about borrowing the money for your small business before you absolutely need it and it's necessary to sustain, because otherwise banks and traditional banks will not loan you the money. And then don't be shy to ask family and friends for small business loans. If they believe in you and they believe in your mission and you have some traction in your small business, I'm sure they'd be willing to help you. So that's how I started.
That is great advice. I actually have never heard that anyone say that before. And so I think that's really going to help somebody who hears that. Thank you for sharing that.
There are a lot of organizations we get involved with that I love to pass along volunteer opportunities to them too. So if you want to help me and volunteer with me, that's great too. Well, let's have you volunteer directly with the other organization we're working with. And then you can also help me at that same event, type of a thing. So it's like building connection within the community. I would love to, of course, shout out the Challenged Athletes Foundation. Their headquarters is here in San Diego, and they're so involved, not only here in Southern California, but nationally and internationally. They help provide grants and support for athletes all over who are participating in competitive sports. And then definitely the Stoke for Life Foundation, Chaka, Charles Webb. So they have helped grow my business from the very beginning. They were the very first supporter of Access Trax and the product before it was even a company, the product. Those 5 adaptive surfers that day in 2016 that were generous of trying out our handmade prototype on the beach, not knowing if it was going to make them get stuck or if it was going to work. And just really the community that has helped me become who I am as a leader in this space and just within my company. And then shout out to my husband, Jeff, who was my first employee, part-time, but gosh, my first employee, and my first intern, my first student intern of this year, Sean. He's been great. So I just wanted to, I know that's a lot, but just say thank you to everyone.
You just, I think, are such an incredible role model for other entrepreneurs. So again, I encourage people to check out Access Trax, see how he can support you as a partner, and check out your website, Entrepreneurial Mindset, which we'll put the information in the article as well.
Thank you to Hera Hub and Felina for helping, support Disability Pride Month and highlighting my business. I consider myself an ally of people with disabilities. And I think it's important to really spread the word for more allies to be out there.